Breaking news here on CNN. A brand new allegation of sexual misconduct has now surfaced against Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. These new accusations appear in the pages of the New Yorker magazine, the product of an investigation by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Ronan Farrow. Our CNN senior media correspondent Brian Stelter is here with me alongside David Gergen, CNN senior political analyst. And gentlemen, we want to be very careful as how we approach this because we at CNN have not been able to confirm any of the reporting here. But this is significant going into a week in which we are now expecting the testimony of Judge Kavanaugh and another woman, Christine Blasey Ford, to air other accusations. Brian, what do we know? What is your assessment?
The headline here is that there is a second woman who is speaking publicly with accusations against Kavanaugh. The subheadline, very important here, is that it has not been corroborated to any great degree. In fact, there are people who have been named as eyewitnesses to this alleged incident who say they do not remember it. This was an incident dating back to to the freshman year at Yale. This student says she was at a dorm room party and things got out of hand. The story is up on NewYorker.com, and it is written by Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer, two outstanding reporters who have been on this case for a while. I know Farrow has been out in California digging into this, as have other reporters in recent days, trying to encourage this woman to speak out. Apparently, she was quite reluctant to do so, afraid to do so, but this story has been making the rounds on Capitol Hill, both among Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans. So even though we're just hearing about this now for the first time in the last few minutes, this has been out there for a while, at least for several days, on Capitol Hill. And that headline of second woman is the key detail, even though I do think we should enter this with a lot of skepticism, given the lack of corroboration and given the fact that she did not share this with anyone apparently 6 years ago, for example, the way that Ford did. Remember, we heard about how Ford talked in her therapy sessions and told her husband about this alleged encounter back in 2012. There's no similar corroboration in this news story.
I mean, you bring up a really good point, though, because according to Ronan Farrow and his co-writer here, it's Jane Mayer, they say that they know of at least 4 Democratic senators who received information about this new allegation, as well as a couple of Republican staffers. David Gergen.
Absolutely. Because the story is so serious, and because it has such obvious implications, I think it's absolutely wise to be cautious and in fairness, frankly, to Judge Kavanaugh, and in fairness to the White House. I do think it's fair to say that if Republican and Democratic senators had this information, it is strange, to put it mildly, that they would want to push on with without a background investigation on Mrs. Ford, as well as this second woman, before they took a vote. It does seem to me when there are 2 women involved, we've always said there's no pattern here. We have this singular incident of Mrs. Ford. There's been no allegation about anybody else. Now there's an allegation. We don't know whether it's true or not. We have to be skeptical until we find out. But in the meantime, it does seem to me, wouldn't a normal group of people say, hold on, guys, with this new development, we need to step back here and be really careful ourselves before we're accused of rushing through with a candidate, in fairness to the country, in fairness to the candidate.
And of course, nothing happens in a vacuum either. In fact, I mean, Ronan Farrow did the due diligence. He took these allegations in his reporting to the White House, to Kavanaugh, and they have statements denying effectively.
Yes, and Kavanaugh is saying this is a smear. We can put on screen Kavanaugh's statement. He says this alleged event from 35 years ago, again, freshman year at Yale, did not happen. The people who knew me then know that this did not happen and have said so. This is a smear, plain and simple. Kavanaugh goes on to say, I look forward to testifying on Thursday about the truth and defending my good name and the reputation for character and integrity I have spent a lifetime building against these last-minute allegations. And Anna, that's the message from the White House as well. The administration also came out with a statement making clear they are standing by Kavanaugh at this moment, saying this 35-year-old uncorroborated claim is the latest in a coordinated smear campaign by the Democrats designed to tear down a good man. So they're saying this is political. The White House says this claim is denied by all who were said to be present and is wholly inconsistent with what many women and men who knew Judge Kavanaugh at the time in college say. The statement ends, this White House stands firmly behind Judge Kavanaugh.
I think it's fair to point out that there are people with differing recollections about what happened. And that's why it's important to have an independent investigation to figure out the truth. Can you see them now going to Mrs. Ford and having a hearing and not knowing more about this before they get there? I mean, how can you have a conversation with
I mean, can you see any
her?
way that this happens now without an investigation? We know the Democrats had gone back to the White House. That was our reporting earlier to say, please, can you mandate an investigation? We know George W. Bush did that during the Anita Hill hearings in order to make sure that that happened prior to the hearings on Clarence Thomas accusations of sexual harassment.
As we talked about earlier, it's only fair that Judge Kavanaugh have a way to clear his name.
Yeah.
And it's hard for him to do that if he's got this hanging over him and he has to go in and testify about Ford.
Right, he must
it's in
be,
his interest.
as he says, eager to testify.
Yeah.
I also think some Republicans are going to respond to this by saying, this is the New Yorker. This is a liberal magazine with yes, two very accomplished reporters, but reporters who may have an agenda. I think that'll be a key talking point going forward on this.
That's fair.
But what's probably most important of all, take out the New Yorker, take out everything. This woman is speaking on the record. She has stated an allegation, a serious allegation that involves a man exposing himself to her. And whatever other political noise there is, that's on the record now from her.
Does this change the game, so to speak, David?
It has the possibility, very definitely, of changing the game, and that's why we have to be so careful and not prejudge it. We need more facts and more effort. For us to sit here and opine on something that's so sensitive and has so many implications, I think it's better for us to sort of, okay, we can tell you what's obviously the implication here, but we can't say for sure what happened. We don't know.
Are you surprised that the White House is standing so firmly behind Judge Kavanaugh without knowing the facts at this point?
Well, unless you're privy to those conversations, I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
They did have several hours of advance notice today, which is notable. We don't know exactly how long the White House has known about this woman and known about the allegation, but we do know there were rumors spreading all afternoon and evening in Washington and New York about this. I think by the time President Trump landed here in New York at 6 p.m., he knew this story was coming. So they've had at least a little bit of time to prepare.
What about the storyboard group that went in to see him and ask him questions? You think they knew or didn't know?
You mean prepping Kavanaugh for this in recent
They've been
days?
prepping him all for several days now. It's an interesting question. How much did they know since it was up on Capitol Hill?
Well,
Republican senators had it.
That's a great question, but we also know that when they were in these prep sessions, they started asking him about partying and his social life. And our reporting is he didn't like that. He got a little prickly.
Yeah.
As I think many people would. When questioned about their college days.
Yeah.
But one of the significant factors of this news story, when you lay it on top of the allegation from Ford, when you lay it on top of what's been publicly reported about Kavanaugh's days in college and high school, is that it is going to provoke more questions about his college days. It is going to provoke more questions about drinking and about the culture in high school and college. Those questions may be fair or unfair, but I think another story, it's going to cause more of those questions.
It's going to raise questions about his credibility as well today. I mean, what he said and what the various under oath, he made various statements that are at variance from what this story says. But it comes back, it's one of these things that the country deserves to go through this carefully and slowly even in order to get it right. Because it's not just the two people involved in their reputations. This is a momentous decision for the Supreme Court, and what happens in
it's a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, a lifetime appointment. Next 30 years, this is resting heavily.
But of course, he is allowed to have been a frat boy. I'm sure other judges have been frat boys. I'm sure other judges, have had similar experiences at college. If you even believe this story. However, this woman says it was a disturbing experience. She says she would like the FBI to investigate. So that is significant that you now have a second woman saying she wants to see an investigation. And to your point about the rush, I was reading stories about 991 today, about Anita Hill, about the reaction on Capitol Hill 27 years ago.
Right.
The exact same conversation was happening. Why the rush? We're right back where we were before.
I mean, is it fair to have any timeline at this point, David Gergen?
Fair to have what kind of timeline?
A timeline for getting through the testimony, through a potential investigation, to eventually put Kavanaugh up for a vote.
It does seem to me that even as we prepare for Thursday testimony, there has to be a couple of days why not only the senators and the White House, but the public can absorb this and begin to make judgments. I think we need to be a little patient with this process playing out, so that, again, I can't tell you how important I think it is to the future of the press in this country, that if he is going to be brought down, and we don't know that yet, but if he's to be brought down, that the press is not seen as a complicit in that effort.